Everyone has told you that you're mysterious, intense, that you have a gaze that can pierce through walls, and you smiled, agreed, maybe even liked hearing it. But deep down, a part of you knows that this explanation was never enough. Because what you carry isn't the seductive personality that people describe in Instagram posts. It's something else. Something older, more unsettling, more real. Have you ever felt at some point that you noticed things that no one else in the room was noticing? A slight change in someone's voice, a silence that lasted half a second longer than it should have, a hidden intention behind a polite smile. And when you tried to explain it to someone, they looked at you as if you were making a drama out of it. But you weren't making anything up. You were reading, and no one taught you that it had a name. This is the first hidden gift of those born under Scorpio, and it's anything but shallow mysticism. It's a perceptive ability that goes beyond what is said, capturing what lies beneath the surface of people and situations. An emotional radar that never switches off. And for years, probably no one told you that this was a gift. They told you that you were distrustful, dramatic, that you saw ghosts where there was only wind. But the wind, in his case, always carried a scent of truth. But this gift comes at a price, because perceiving everything all the time without a filter is exhausting, and this is where the second pattern resides, one you may never have named, the need to protect yourself from what you yourself see. You build walls. Not because you're cold, but because feeling so much all the time without rest would make anyone isolate themselves a little. And the outside world calls that distance. It calls that secrecy, never survival. There's a scene you might recognize. You're in a casual conversation. Everything seems normal, everyone's laughing, and suddenly something inside you tightens. No one else noticed, but you felt the temperature of the room change before any words confirmed it. And then comes the question you've carried since childhood, without ever having a complete answer. Why do I feel this and others don't? The answer begins to appear when we understand that Scorpio doesn't live on the surface of things. It never has. There's a force within you that refuses to accept the easy version of any story. You need to go deeper. Always. Even when it hurts. Even when it would be more comfortable to simply believe what everyone else believes and move on. And it is precisely this refusal that has made you more than once in your life go through alone what others didn't even realize existed. A loss whose magnitude no one understood. A betrayal that you felt coming before it happened, but that you chose to ignore, hoping you were wrong. A version of yourself that died silently at a certain stage of life, without a funeral, without anyone noticing, because on the outside everything seemed the same, but inside, nothing remained the same. What if I told you that this process of dying a little and coming back different, which you might think is just a difficult phase, is actually the most powerful and least understood gift of your sign? That there's a word for it, an entire mechanism behind this feeling of being reborn from your own ashes, and that most people who possess this gift spend their entire lives thinking they're just suffering more than they should, without suspecting that it had a hidden purpose. There's a difference between suffering needlessly and going through something that prepares you for something bigger. Have you ever stopped to think how many times this feeling of starting over from scratch, alone, silently, has repeated itself in your life without anyone noticing its true magnitude? It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book. It's called The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose, and it doesn't talk about magazine horoscopes or generic predictions. It talks about the internal structure of each sign, about the invisible mechanisms that Scorpio operates without realizing it, and about how to transform this depth that you've always carried alone into direction, clarity, and real purpose. For those born with this hunger to go deep, This material works like a map. It doesn't teach you to be someone else. It teaches you to finally understand why you've always been this way. If you've arrived here with a slightly tight chest, recognizing each phrase as if it were written about your own story, that's no coincidence. It's your way of perceiving everything now turned inward. This is the moment to look at this more deeply, before the feeling passes and becomes just another discomfort tucked away in a drawer. The link is in the first pinned comment. But be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. In the comments, tell me, when was the last time you felt like you were starting over inside, even if everything seemed the same on the outside? Getting back to the story, even before any transformation happens, there's a gift that comes first, silent, almost invisible, even to yourself. It's sharp intuition, the third sense that Scorpio carries from childhood, but which is almost always mistaken for distrust or jealousy. Imagine a very sensitive radio antenna, one of those that picks up frequencies that other devices don't even register. You've always been that antenna. You sensed the atmosphere of a room before a single word was spoken. You felt when something was wrong in a relationship months before any proof appeared. And most of the time, when you tried to tell someone how you felt, you heard back that you were being dramatic or paranoid or simply too negative. But time has categorically proven you right more times than you'd like to admit. And that creates a strange weight, the certainty that you see what's coming before it happens, mixed with the frustration of never being taken seriously while it's still only beginning. This is the first great paradox of your sign. The gift that should protect you, when ignored by others, becomes a source of loneliness. And when you learn to trust it without needing anyone else's validation, it becomes the most accurate compass there is. This silent restart has a name. It's called emotional alchemy, and it's Scorpio's second hidden gift, the ability to take raw pain and over time transform it into depth, into strength, into a kind of wisdom that only exists in those who have burned inside at least once. Imagine a furnace, not just any bonfire that burns quickly and goes out soon, but a blacksmith's furnace, one of those that reach such a high temperature that the metal ceases to be metal for an instant and becomes something else. Liquid, malleable, about to become a new form. That's how your internal process works. You don't simply suffer and remain the same. You enter the furnace, and when you come out, you are no longer the same person who went in. People around you sometimes don't even notice, because outwardly the change is subtle. But those who live closely with you feel that something has become denser, firmer, harder to break. The problem is that no one taught you to recognize this process as it happens. So in the midst of the furnace, you think you're just destroying yourself. You think that pain won't lead anywhere, that the end of a cycle is just loss, meaningless, without purpose. And it's precisely at this point in the heat, without yet seeing the new form being created, that the most disturbing doubt appears. What if this time I can't come back whole? But you always came back, maybe changed, maybe with scars, only you know, but you came back. And each time that happens, a new layer of wisdom settles on you, almost like sediment, almost as if suffering itself were building a kind of instinct that no generic self-help book can teach. In many traditions, it's called the mark of those who have crossed their own personal hell and return knowing things that those who have never been burned cannot know. You've just recognized in yourself a pattern that most people go their whole lives without naming, transforming pain into strength, alone, without a manual, without anyone explaining how to do it right. What if there was a path that organized this process, instead of you continuing to reinvent the wheel every time life knocks you down? The book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose, was designed precisely for this, for those who already know how to be reborn but want to stop doing it in the dark. The last units with promotional access are running out. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. You have another gift that no one taught you to name, and it appears well before any major crisis. Loyalty. Not that kind of loyalty that comes from pretty speeches, from posting motivational quotes about friendship. Yours is different. It's almost physical. You sense when someone is genuine before any concrete proof appears, and you sense with the same force when someone is playing a role. This has left you, more than once, alone in a room full of people because you refuse to fake a connection that your body had already identified as false. People call it selective, hard to please. But in reality, it's a highly refined protection system trained throughout life to prevent you from giving your trust to those who don't deserve it. And this system, when you learn to use it consciously instead of letting it isolate you out of fear, becomes one of the rarest gifts that exist. The ability to build deep and true bonds, precisely because you don't accept superficial ones. But there's an uncomfortable counterpoint here, and it's what separates those who experience this gift fully from those who experience it as a prison. Because the same intensity that protects you can also convince you that no one will ever be able to fully understand you. And it's easy to confuse discernment with premature giving up. It's easy to stop trying before even testing whether the person in front of you deserved a real chance. There's an image that perhaps explains this better than any theory. Think of a dam. A well-built dam doesn't exist to stop the water from flowing forever. It exists to control when and how that water will pass, preventing everything from collapsing at once and destroying what's below. Your heart works similarly. The layers you build aren't to lock the water away forever. They're to ensure that when it's released, it's for those who truly know how to handle that force. The problem is when the dam becomes a permanent prison, when the fear of opening the gates becomes routine, and you forget that a dam also needs to release water from time to time in a controlled manner so it doesn't crack from the inside. This means taking a risk. It means letting someone see what's behind the gate, even knowing there's a risk. And that's exactly where the difference lies between living this gift as wise protection or as solitude disguised as strength. This is the kind of recognition that hurts in a good way, because finally someone is describing something you felt but had never heard aloud. The difference between wise discernment and isolation out of fear is subtle, and that's exactly what a part of the book, The Divine Path, that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose, talks about. How to use the intensity of Scorpio to your advantage for connection instead of letting it become a permanent wall. It's material made for those who are tired of protecting their own heart alone, without any guidance. Promotional access is for a limited time. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. And we arrive at the most silent gift of all, the one that no one talks about because it's not flashy, doesn't shine on social media, doesn't become a meme. It's the ability to endure alone what would break most people and remain standing the next day without announcing to anyone the magnitude of the internal battle you fought during the early hours of the morning. Consider this. How many times has someone looked at you and said you seem too strong, too controlled, as if nothing could shake you? And how many of those times were said right in the middle of a phase where, inside, you were holding on so as not to crumble? This contrast between the image of solidity you project and how much you really feel inside is one of the loneliest aspects of possessing this gift, because no one offers support to someone who seems to need no support at all. You've done this more times than you can count. You cried in the bathroom and returned to the table with a normal face. You received news that deeply hurt and still solved someone's problem that same day. You held back your own emotional breakdown in silence because you felt it wasn't the right time, or that no one there could handle it with you. This has a name too, and it's not brute force. It's alchemical resilience, the ability to go through the fire and instead of turning to ash, become a denser, more real, truer version of who you've always been. Imagine a pressure chamber, like those used to transform coal into diamonds. No diamond forms without immense pressure, sustained for a very long time, resulting in what finally appears. That's how the people around you see you. Someone who always solves everything, always on their feet, without imagining the pressure chamber that operates silently inside, every day, in a place where there is no immediate relief. From the outside, nobody sees the pressure. They only see the problem is that living inside this chamber without ever being seen comes at a cost. There's a specific kind of loneliness in being the one who holds everything in, because whoever possesses this gift rarely allows anyone to see the process unfolding. And the reason you're still here listening to this, recognizing each phrase as if it were written on your own skin, is precisely because this gift never abandoned you. It just waited for someone to finally give it a name. Recognizing this gift of alchemical resilience changes how you look at every crisis you've ever faced alone. What if, instead of continuing to endure everything automatically, you learn to channel this strength intentionally, with direction, with a clear purpose? That's exactly the invitation of the book, The Divine Path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose. To transform the ability you already have to walk through fire into a compass for your life, instead of just a silent survival mechanism. Units with special conditions are running out. The link is in the first pinned comment. There is one last gift, and perhaps the hardest to accept, because it doesn't ask you to do anything. It asks you to stop. It is the gift of profound repose, the ability, after so much perceiving, so much transforming, so much protecting, and so much enduring, to simply exist without needing to prove anything to anyone, not even to yourself. You've spent your whole life being the person who sees too much, feels too much, carries too much, and perhaps no one has ever told you that it's also okay to rest within that depth, without needing to turn everything into a crisis, a revelation, a silent battle. There is deep water that doesn't need a storm to be respected. It is deep, even when quiet. And it's curious to realize that many of the people around you spend their lives on the surface, never feeling the weight or the beauty of what you feel every day. They don't have your gifts, but they also don't have your burden. And perhaps the true spiritual maturity of Scorpio isn't about learning to feel even more, because you already know plenty of that. It's about learning that depth and peace are not enemies, that it's possible to be deep and still be at peace with that depth. Imagine truly deep water, the kind found in dark ancient lakes. On the surface, it might be completely still, almost mirror-like. This doesn't mean it's shallow. It means it has learned that not all depth needs to manifest as agitation. Immense force can exist beneath and yet stillness above. This is perhaps the quietest and most important invitation this gift offers you, not needing to constantly prove its depth for it to remain real. In the end, perhaps Scorpio's greatest hidden gift is not any one of these in isolation, but the silent sum of them all, perceiving what others do not see, dying and being reborn as many times as necessary, loving with a loyalty that cannot be explained in pretty words, walking through fire without turning to ash, and finally learning to rest within one's own depths without fear of them. No one taught you the names of these things because they never fit into a magazine horoscope sentence, nor a quick social media post. But perhaps now, something inside you has finally found a mirror where it recognizes itself whole, without needing to simplify what has always been too big to fit into a few words. And if there's one truth that runs through every layer we've traversed so far, it's this: you were never too intense, too mysterious, or too difficult. You were simply born carrying gifts that the world hasn't yet learned to name properly. And perhaps that is, deep down, the true gift of being born under the most profound sign of the zodiac. The ability to become, repeatedly, more true than you were before, until nothing remains but your own essence, whole, profound, and finally at peace with itself.